Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So what I'm going to do today, I will talk about some of the procurement aspect which you can capture in the NetZero cloud. Now, obviously, if you're a business, right, you might buy stuff from a supplier, right, and then you might have to realize that you might have to capture those information in the NetZero if you really wanted to calculate the supplier uh, emission aspect, right? So that's where we got a few options in the net zero, which really help business to capture the information. First of all, you need to capture information about the supplier, and then you need to capture information about the procurement items, right? Which you're planning to buy or you already bought it, and then you have a procurement summary, which actually roll up all your items to one place under a procurement summary, which gives you an information about the emission stuff, right? So because the number of items you bought, right, or the price you paid, it needs to equate to the carbon emission. So and that's why we got different procurement data set in place, emission factors you need to keep into consideration. There are a lot of calculation that goes behind the scene, but if you're a business owner, you don't really have to worry about it. Salesforce just do stuff for you behind the scene. So the idea of this today's session is just to give you a tiny bit of information about how you can capture your supplier information or procurement item or as well as a procurement summary, right? Okay, so first thing first, as usual, you need to have an org, right, to try it. Then you go to this tic-tac-toe icon and you just say supplier. Um, okay, so this is where you actually enter the supplier information. So it's pretty simple to do that. Click on new. If you wanted to add a new supplier, you just add a name and then you can link the account and company relationship type is a value chain or utility supplier and the description. That's all it is. Let's look at this one, right? Acme one. So you got a forestation name of the supplier, and then you link to the account Acme and the company relationship type. We haven't specified anything. So it's an optional. I mean, but it's good to put it. So let's look at all other suppliers which we have in the system. Let's look at this carbon broker, right? So this is the real information that I personally believe should be captured in the system. But I'm not very happy they didn't put the description. But it's good to put the description as well. Because the thing is that the more you have detailed information about your supplier, right, it's good to track back when you have some questions or concern, right? Um, because otherwise, let's say 5 years down the line, you're trying to see, what description I should I put there, right? It's not really great. So it's better to capture those stuff. Yeah. So um, excuse me. So the company relationship type is the value chain supplier, which is what we mentioned here, and the account is the carbon broker. Pretty simple, right? Okay. Now, obviously, if you have a system in place, an in-house system where you try to capture every procurement details like procurement items and procurements, and you might even have something maybe in your in-house system where it works out for you or it calculates the procurement summary for you. But in that, you're right. If you wanted to calculate the emission factor and also view stuff based on data analytics, right? Where Einstein can go and do stuff and based on the data, gives you metrics and charts and beautiful dashboard, then it makes sense to, key in your information about your procurement and supplier in the Salesforce, right? So the first thing first, what we do, we look at how to create the procurement items. I mean, as usual, I'll show you an existing example, which makes it more useful for you. Okay, so I will do procurement under the TikTok icon. Wait a second. Uh, M scope. Okay, so the way you search it, you just look for scope 3, right? And it comes under scope three procurement items. So you go here. You can take an example of any procurement items, right? So let's look at this 20. Obviously, you need to specify the date because if you wanted to calculate the procurement summary, you need to work out the date from a start date to end date, right? You can't calculate the procurement summary and the items for 2021 or 2023, for instance, if you bought these items like 10 years ago, right? That's not how it works. So you need to have an accurate information. So let's look at one of this one, right? For 2021, let's see the manufacturing stuff. Okay, so contains few information. One is the name, right, and the final scope emission, which is like that is it's calculated, right, based on the scope to emission calculation type. So it is calculated for you. So I'll tell you there are two things which you need to pay attention to. So this is your supplier, which you just created. So let's say in this case you have uh, Allied Technologies, and the procurement summary is something you create. Okay, while we're here, okay, what we do, I'll just flag this detail for a second, park it aside. So what I'll do, I'll just show you how to create a procurement summary. It will be good to do that first, right? So procurement summary is where all your procurement items data will be rolled up to. Okay, so let's say for let's look for 20. Okay, we got for 2021, right? So all the items associated with 2021, the things you bought, or based on the quantity or based on the price, whatever, right? You need to put that as a procurement item, and which will be linked to this procurement summary. If you remember that I mentioned here, you need to have a procurement summary. So that's the item I'm referring to here. Okay, so we got a name here, and the currency code has to match. If you're dealing with New Zealand code, it has to talk about New Zealand. If you and the day, if you're dealing with the United States, it has to be USD. Or if you're dealing with countries like India, you need to have INR. I think it's INR, or Chinese yen. Or if you're dealing with uh, other countries, right? You need to uh, put the right currency code, right? So that the calculation is worked out correctly for you. And then you have emission source. You just this is something I talked about in one of the episode. And these are the procurement emission factor. So you just click here. You can link it there. So it just normally it contains information about procurement, the values, right? For instance, emission factor, the date, that kind of stuff. Okay, so and these are the things that get calculated for you. So the one thing you need to pay attention here, not much. Okay, so these things are actually worked out for you based on the roll up value you get it from the procurement items. So and this is a carbon footprint. Remember you talked about footprints, right? So that's the reason why a lot of things are involved when you wanted to capture say scope three or scope one or scope whatever, right? Oh sorry, scope two. You need to have a lot. You need to factor. You need to imagine certain things, right? First of all, you need to have an emission factor. You need to have a carbon footprint, uh, which is scope procurement footprint, that kind of stuff. All right. So let's say that this is the procurement we talked about. We linked it here, supplier here, category one. Sorry, spending category one, spending category two. You can put one if you like, but if you wanted to have detailed analysis, right? For in this case, we have manufacturing is the top one. It's like a hierarchy structure. Then you have subcontracting, then you have clean room, and amount spent. So there are two things. One is the amount spent, and there's a purchase purchase quantity. You can use either of them based on the type. So what I mean by type is this boy, emission calculation type. If you're using, there are two types we normally talk about. In fact, there are three, but just for now, spend based and quantity based. So if you've selected spend based, then you need to put the value here. If you selected the quantity base, then you have to put the value in quantity, right? So, and then behind the scene, the Net Zero Cloud it will go and do all the necessary calculation to give you the right emission information. So that's what we wanted, right? From a business perspective, you don't really want to get into too detailed, nitty gritty, but yes, it's good to know the way the things are calculated behind the scene, because obviously you don't want something like a black box, have no idea what's happening, right? So you do need to know what's going on, how it's calculated using an emission factor and all of the stuff. But you should appreciate the simplicity that Net Zero Cloud that gives to your business owner, right? Without worrying about too much details. Okay, so that's the procurement item. You can add more items to it, and yeah. So if I look at say procurement summary, and if I go to related list, you can see there are a lot of items linked to it, and so this will be linked to your as a part of the roll-up summary. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much I wanted to cover in a tiny video today. I hope you find this session informative. It's important to know, right? If you're a business owner, right, you might have to capture a lot of information. I'm not teaching this course just to explain to a Salesforce consultant, but also from a business owner perspective, right? How this technology can improve the lives of a business owner when it comes to capturing net zero activities and to achieve their net zero goal by certain date, right? So that's all I wanted to cover in this episode. I hope you guys have an amazing Saturday. Adios.